All right. Well, I want to break this down a little bit because you wrote in your piece that attacks against Muslim, South Asian, Sikh, Hindu, Arab, and Middle Eastern communities, and presumably, right? And I don't know. You tell me. Presumably, when you see a Sikh or a Hindu attacked, presumably it's because the attacker presumed that person was Muslim. I don't know, but that's what I would guess, that there isn't necessarily a high level of sophistication when you're talking about these type of bigots, but that the attacks were up 45% in 2017. And this is really amazing because, I mean, I guess we can look back, right, and see in the year after 9/11, one would speculate that there would be an increase in attacks, and we should talk maybe briefly about George W. Bush's work in trying to mitigate that. One of the few things that I think that it can be said about him that is commendable. But when I look back and I think of like that year where Pam Geller, I think it was, made this issue of the 9/11 mosque, which was a joke, and people can go back and look at this, and it was a completely just a horrible example of anti-Muslim bigotry and Islamophobia. But it was effective, at least in terms of garnering some attention. So one would have anticipated that, like, we would have seen a spike then. But the idea that we see this spike now is I mean, I think you're right. It's stunning and staggering.
Yeah, and it's also tragic. I think so. First off. Yes, you noted that a 45%, we saw a 45% increase in hate violence incidents and xenophobic political rhetoric targeting a huge swath of communities in the last year, essentially, since the election. We also saw that 82% of the incidents that we cataloged were overwhelmingly animated by anti-Muslim sentiment or Islamophobia. Now, that, of course, extends to a broad cross-section of individuals, as you noted, for whom it was enough to be perceived as Muslim, including someone like myself, for example, who is South Asian and not Muslim, to be a worthy target of violence. So yes, indeed, and tragically, the overwhelming motivator for violence and divisive political attacks that we saw was indeed sourced or rooted in anti-Muslim sentiment. I would also say that tragically, we have seen increasingly a deepening symbiotic relationship between problematic, divisive, and openly Islamophobic and bigoted political rhetoric and indeed attacks themselves. Now, we at SAALT have been looking at xenophobic political rhetoric and hate violence for the better part of a decade, and we were very careful for quite some time to not be able to actually point to a direct relationship between the two, meaning that immediately after someone in higher office or who aspired to higher office made a xenophobic political statement, in turn, a hate violence incident would occur in the immediate aftermath of said statement or pronouncement. What we have been able to look at, indeed, over the last year is, in fact, what appears to be a direct relationship between problematic statements and policies issued by President Trump or his administration and violence incidents. In fact, 1 in 5 of the hate violence perpetrators that we cataloged or documented in the year essentially after the election referenced President Trump policy, or one of President Trump's statements. And so,
wow. So wait a second. So if I understand you correctly, you have at least 20% of these people have explicitly, basically, name-checked Donald Trump and his policies after they have committed some type of violent act in this way.
That's right.
Wow.